So just a very quick recap. Last week, I can't remember quite which one I did, but I think I just talked through the ideas. I was thinking some sort of winter scene, and I was particularly looking at trees and perhaps using dry brush techniques to try and give an impression of like the twigs and the winter branches. So that was one of a couple of demos from last week. This week I thought I'd just do a little bit of watercolours, and I was looking for an image with a little bit of light, sorry, a little bit of light in it. So this one, although lots of shadows, there is light behind here. So this was just South Church Hall, just over the back from where I live. I've sketched it out, and I basically sort of started here with the building, try and get this angle here, and then just work my way through the windows here. And maybe a little bit wide here, but I don't think I'm too far out. And main thing with perspective is just keeping that angle steep on that one, and just a little bit of an angle on the ridge. I'm seeing a little bit of the end of the building as well as the front face, so there will be a little bit of perspective going in there. So that's that, but I think just a fairly minimal drawing. It doesn't, quite a lot of the drawing, things like the window details and these bits of timbers, I think I can do that with the watercolours themselves. The first thing to do is I'm going to do a little bit over two pages, because I'm particularly, again, thinking about the trees and trying to get this sort of dry brush effect. So to start with, I'll get some sky going. So it's watercolours. I've pre-mixed a few colours. I've got you probably won't be able to see this, but quite a warm colour here. So a little mixture of oranges and slightly pinky colours. And then I've also got some greys for clouds. And that was my trial one. A nice big wash brush. I'm going to dampen this area to start with, just so that I've got a bit more time to work. Try and get that a little bit wetter. I could probably pop a wash over the whole of this bit too, really. But it might be better to do the top wash, let that dry. Hi, Mary. And then work that one. So maybe I'll do that in this one. So that'll be that bit. And then getting the warmer colours. Just sort of thinking, let's go back to the bigger brush actually. I don't want it too strong, but I just want a kind of hint of warmer, pinkier colours. And I find it easier to mix the colours with this brush, because I've got a bit more control, and then put them on with a bigger brush. That's just something I've just been playing around with. Sometimes when I've done these demos, I feel like I've gone in far too strong with the colour. So that's getting a sense of those warmer colours, and then leaving a space here for the sun. So it might be slightly exaggerating the colour, which I don't mind. I've got this watercolour book earlier in the year. I won some vouchers for this particular publisher, and I came across this art. I've seen this artist work online for quite a while. He came along to the Wales trip and so on. So I thought that might be quite a nice little book. A little bit more of that. And then what I want to do there, while it's still wet, is get some of these clouds in. So again, I'll go to just wash my brush out. And I've got these mixes here, grey mixes. Let's get these in. So I'll just show you a little bit more about that in a tick. So this is where you kind of want the paper still wet or damp. Sometimes it will cauliflower a bit too much if it's too wet. Cauliflower effect, but again, if it's too dry, I'll get a very hard edge. So that's enough for an impression of the clouds. Colour-wise, what I did there was I had to go. I've not really tried this too much before, but using green and purple to get grey. So that's the sort of grey I've got. And I'm quite like that. That's a bit too purpley, so a little bit more green. Quite often mix my, so that's an exaggeration of it, but quite often mix my greys with blue and brown. I thought it'd be nice to just have a bit of a change, or I make them a bit too purpley. It's sometimes crimson and blue. I thought the green was quite a nice addition there. And actually it's fairly strong there, so maybe that wouldn't be a bad, just lift that out a little bit. Bit of that up there. That's still wet. I don't know, that's still wet, so I think I'm going to leave that, but I would probably then make a darker wash, sort of darken the sky and just flood that whole area, apart from where I've got the light on the snow. And I'm thinking perhaps to change the angle a little bit, bring it out here, just exaggerate that effect. So I'll leave that one at that, and just swap over. So when it comes to painting the trees, this is the bit that's really, I find quite tricky and quite hit and miss. I will get a little bit of the tree trunks first. So I've got a grey in my palette already. This will do for that. And some of these are snow covered anyway, so they don't need to be too dense. Something a bit like that. And it may be better to do the twigs first and then the tree trunks. I'll perhaps do half and half. And then it's then a matter of just experimenting with different brushes to try and get a sort of an effect. So I'm going to just try out on this paper first. I don't want it too wet, so let's try that. So a rougher brush there. Yeah, that's going to work. Just trying to keep a slightly broken look. So that's actually a little bit wet, but I think that's working quite nicely. I went with the stiffer brush, the nylon brush. Again, similar sort of mixture. Just test it out somewhere else before it goes on. Just use yeah, that's a little bit more of a dry brush. So that's probably a little bit more control. And this is where, if you've got very textured paper, you can get a better result. This is like a medium texture, so it's not going to be, I'll just vary that a little bit, not too much. Hopefully that is then enough to suggest, this brush comes to a nice point, so I can actually get some of the twigs and branches in. Yeah, I think probably that side might be slightly better. But yeah, good to have one that you can just play around with and experiment with. Once it's then once it's down, it's there. And really, the essence of watercolour is trying to keep it fairly lively looking, get a nice fresh looking paintwork, and not overworking, not over labouring, just leaving it. It's kind of less is more. That okay? Eddie?
So are you blocking in?
Sorry?
Are you blocking in, parts?
What I would do is I would, so if I was doing the whole thing, I would, this might be dry now, so I would basically work kind of background to foreground. I would get some of this in X,
Yeah.
and then the tree, this bit would be over the top of that.
So no, I meant in the tree itself. Is that
Oh, blocking in, kind of, yeah. It's trying to just get a, rather than where we've got all these very, very fine twigs and branches, it's trying to create an impression of them, like a watercolour interpretation.
okay?
Because at this sort of scale, it would be, you might get a few more, you might be able to paint a few more individual twigs in if you want to. very finely. But there's going to be a limit to how much of that you could do before it all starts to look very awkward and very frozen looking. So it's more of a sort of impressionistic way of working rather than a photorealism sort of
Yes.
style. If you're working on a big scale, you might be able to get some, very, very detailed twigs and things like that. But this would be a sort of kind of shorthand way, a sort of impression of the light catching that. You can still see through to the clouds,
Yes.
and ideally a slightly broken kind of brushwork. It does take sort of almost like quite a dry brush. Just try that a little bit darker. Yeah, just something like that, so you're getting a little bit of the colours showing through. Using the texture to break up the brushwork. Which I'll probably do exactly the same with oils. I try and
Yes.
so some people paint very solidly, but I quite enjoy paintings where you can see through to the layers, underneath.
Especially in winter.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, thanks.
I think right,